Is that
That's okay,
intentional?
because I haven't
no.
turned anything on yet. Where's the machine? Here it is. Oh, there it is.
Recording in progress.
Okay, it's all on. Thank you, Chris. This is weird because Patrick's over there, but that's okay. Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the Economic Development Subcommittee meeting for September 6th to order, time being 5:35. A note to residents, all citizens are welcome to attend public board and committee meetings in person. Meetings are also live streamed and archived by Franklin TV and on Franklin Town Hall TV YouTube channel. Meetings are also shown live and on repeat on Comcast Channel 9 and Verizon Channel 29. In an effort to maximize citizen engagement opportunities, citizens are welcome to continue to participate remotely via phone or Zoom. The URL for the meeting is on the agenda on the town website. The phone number is 1-929-205-6099. Enter the meeting ID number 857-7568-903. 9063. I'll do that again. 857-7568-9063. Then press the pound button. With me in chambers tonight are Councilor Sheridan, Councilor Jones, and on Zoom is Councilor Frangillo. Right, let's jump into the agenda, the proposed sidewalk snow removal bylaw and map. We talked about this a little bit before, and so this is an update from our conversation, I think, Jamie, but I'm going to give it to Jamie to take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And welcome to the EDC and our audience member. It's great to have somebody here who's interested in this. Just for the background of what's here in the packet, there are two things. One, there is a map which shows, and Brutus will go in a little more detail in a second, which shows essentially in pink the areas that would be responsible for snow clearing of the sidewalks out in front of their properties. So it's called the sidewalk snow removal by property owner map. This is the same type of map we did for downtown parking, and we've been doing these for other areas in the town code because, Madam Chair, I know you and I agree. We've spoken many times with this. People really do relate and understand maps a lot more, oftentimes than words.
Well, I love maps.
And you can contrast the map with the words, because we also have in here a revised bylaw that Amy, in fact, worked with the town attorney on. Ever since the bylaw that the town originally had on the books was enacted and then repealed, laws have changed on all these matters. And there was a great little toolkit, I think, from MAPC that had done sample bylaws in numerous municipalities in the area. And so essentially we have to make some additional definitions in here about the width of the sidewalks, and there's some other requirements. So the bylaw before everybody this evening is a modernized bylaw that fits the town of Franklin's code, but does it in a way that also conforms to state law. I will say there's really nothing in here earth-shattering or gotcha. It's just that we need to consider like ice coming off of awnings or signs and roofs, things of that sort. We needed to define in here the width of the sidewalks, which is 36 inches, 3 feet, which is ADA compliance. Most of this is pretty routine and understandable. It's just that the law now requires the town to have all of this additional language basically on the books. I just want to note the most substantive difference, other than the additional legal gobbledygook, is really the fact that the staff are proposing a $50 per violation fine. Okay, the previous town code was $25,
right.
And the reason why is we found from talking to some other communities too, if you do an incremental fine, you have to then enforce it and track it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot more work on our staff to say, oh, one Main Street in December got a $25 ticket, and then one Main Street again in March, And then what about if it's the third violation happens a whole nother year or two later? And so we're proposing in here to have just a $50 per violation fine, which makes it easy for enforcement, because if somebody has not done this appropriately, then they can be fined. As we have disclosed many times before, Brutus can speak to this in terms of fines from the water department or sewer department. We traditionally do a lot of education before we do fines. We don't actually write a lot of tickets. The police may do some. Brutus, I can't think of how many tickets the DPW actually fines people. It's very, very two.
Two? Is that the water?
Twice.
The
Water? It's probably, on snow removal?
Oh, snow I never had.
Snow removal never happened.
Right.
And so the bylaw's in here, and I think hopefully folks are comfortable with the language. On the map up here, again, everything's in pink. Brutus will go through it a little bit, but this is based off the discussion at the last EDC meeting. And then there were little streets in here, like on K Street, that we didn't discuss. But every other road around K Street in the middle between Emmons and Dean, we added K Street in to make it consistent and contiguous around that neighborhood. So other than that, Madam Chair, unless Brutus has a lot to add, the map is the map. Brutus, or Madam Chair?
Yeah, we'll go to Brutus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Jamie. Yeah, this is the conversation we had last time, and we tried to put together, me and Jamie, Kate, and Amy talked about it, and we thought a lot of this made sense. It's not, it's obviously discretion up to you, the extent of the road is what we want to do, but it makes sense to us. We looked at it as a feasibility study. We looked at it as, the number of commercial properties, and then additionally, obviously 140, the high speed, and we also looked at the commuter. I think that was one of the big things that the folks walking.
Yep.
So it makes sense. Going through discussion of the bylaw, like real briefly, I was, Amy, I was away and I came back. She did a great job on this, and it brought up a lot of things that I just encountered that, I guess if this passes, most people are going to do it as far as the enforcement goes. There'll always be a couple people that don't. So this is kind of fair, and as Jamie says, we do a lot of public education. Maybe some people say they don't, or they will, or maybe a neighbor helps out, but it's getting that word out there that we're going to start doing that. And then additionally, what I always have to deal with, which I think this does a great job, is we could have a storm on a Tuesday, it gets clear, then it warms and cools like we do, and it's the ice. You guys know, people always know the snow, but they're always worried about the ice afterwards, and that's why we're out salting. So this is a similar type thing, that the folks would be aware that they still need to maintain it, whether it's coming off an awning, dripping off their building, or just, pooling up. So, got to throw a little salt on it. So, we talked about the bylaw. I think it's pretty good. Except the one part that says, my discretion of Public Works Director. I think that should be Jamie's job. So,
He's
I don't like
actually being
I don't like being
serious.
the police force.
I know you don't. I know you don't. Yeah, and I can understand that. It's
So.
like, you're a service person, you're not the police force, right?
Yeah, and I think, we put in the 12-hour thing, but I think everybody knows that the storm's longer. It's not, we're not jumping at the end of the storm to go, and I'm not looking to ticket people like the police are or anything like that. We just want to get our roads clear, and depending on the duration and everything else. It's practicality, but I know by statute we have to put something down.
Yeah, I think, through you, Madam Chair, really quickly, I think, I wanted Brutus to say that, but, we did agree as a staff, even though the draft went out as the DPW director, when we did follow up with it this week, that everybody felt comfortable with me being in that position, because ultimately, if there is an unusually large heavy snowfall, myself and the fire chief are gonna make that call townwide anyway, right? So, it does make, if the EDC feels comfortable with it being the town administrator, we can switch that out. I'm comfortable with it. We could also leave it as the DPW director, could also leave it as the fire chief. It's okay.
Or we could do like, there's a lot, it says at the discretion of the Public Works Director and the Police Chief. That's the ones we have a lot to go on there, so it's just something to do. And I think we're trying to say is none of us are trying to power trip. We're just trying to do the right thing.
You're trying to get rid of it.
You're right.
Okay, are there any, Kobe has his hand up, so we're going to go to Kobe on Zoom.
just clarifying on that last point, are you talking about the idea of extending the timeline, that you don't want that responsibility?
I think it's number 147-4, the penalties, is how I understood it. No?
No, it's 147-1.
Okay, all right.
Kobe,
So,
you are correct.
Good thing you said something, Kobe.
Kobe, you are correct. In the event of an unusually high snowfall, which can happen over 2 days, the
Right.
current bylaw says DPW director makes that call, but I think what Brutus is asking is for the EDC to change that to the town administrator, because I'd be making that call in an unusually heavy snowstorm anyway.
Right.
Okay.
Because, right, so I think he's probably correct with that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess you guys would know better than us. It did strike me as, I just assumed the DPW director would be the most on top of snowstorm
Oh, I am.
timelines.
Well, I'm sure, I think there's a storm, like, group of people that get together, right? You guys discuss this all the time, like you and the chief and probably Brutus and,
The emergency
Superintendent
management
schools.
team, yeah, it's a pretty
Yeah.
extensive group. It's like 10 or 12 of us, yeah. And National Grid is included in that, Eversource, like everybody, Dean College, like we have an emergency management team. And the fire chief and I do run that group, so it makes most sense to probably have the town administrator make that call. Because this is, again, an unusually heavy snowfall, right?
which we'll never have ever again.
Which we may
as
never
it's
have
100
ever again.
degrees.
I think you will. Say that now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Okay,
So we're comfortable with that. And we can make that tweak if the EDC feels comfortable with the language in the map and we move this on to the council, we can make that tweak before it gets to the council.
okay. Well, I'm okay with it. Counselor Sheridan?
Yes, this question for you. So what exactly call will you make now? I'm just trying to clarify.
What call would we make now?
Yeah.
Fortunately, we haven't had to do much, but you would basically call, basically what I would do is if we're gonna get more than 12 hours of consistent snow, and, you know, I'm hypothesizing here, but like, say it was 24 hours of heavy snow, and we were gonna see 2.5 feet. I would extend that hour from the requirement being 12 hours minimum to clear up your sidewalk, and I would say, I'm making this up.
Yeah.
I would say 48 hours, we're expecting all the public downtown on those streets to have their sidewalks clear. And I would consult with the DPW, to Kobe's point, I would end up consulting with the fire chief, the police chief, the DPW director. We're probably also in that situation getting directive from the governor. There's probably an active state of emergency in
Right.
that size, in that kind of scope of a snowstorm. Interestingly enough, most towns have that as a 12-hour requirement. So, you know, we're pretty
I'm just
commensurate.
curious,
there.
what do you do now? You said you make the call anyways now. What call would that be? What would you do now before this law?
You would, well, we don't have a call, on removal of sidewalk,
Yeah.
we don't have anything
Right.
now, so we wouldn't call anything, because we wouldn't
Okay.
call for people to do anything. But if there was a state of emergency enacted by the governor, we would follow those directives. If we had a massive power outage, or if we had widespread claims, we may open a facility, it just
Okay.
depends on
Yeah.
things. We would maybe open a facility for a warming shelter.
Okay.
We may have to provide water or food, I mean, those
Yeah.
are extenuating circumstances,
Okay.
right? But.
And I
But it would basically be following, in that kind of a storm, the governor's gonna call a state of emergency to clear the roads and keep them completely clear,
Right,
right?
right.
So we would just be following their directive.
Madam
Brutus,
Chair.
you have anything to add?
Yeah, you know, if it gets, I think what Jamie's trying to say, and I can just tell you practicality, if the storms are that bad, like, everybody knows that.
Right.
This is like the last thing we're doing.
We
This-
just gotta look out the window, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that's not the ones we gotta, because and I always say it when we have a big storm, say we have 12 inches, everybody understands that. They know it's taking us a little longer to do everything that we do. It's when people get really cranky when it's 3 to 5 inches.
Right.
They want it done now, get it done now, but, you know, these big storms, they don't happen that often, knock on wood. So everybody's kind of been all together. They know, gee, my sidewalk's not done. Well, no kidding, because we've been plowing for 72 hours and they get it. So I think it's the small stuff, so just having this on the book, so.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you all set,
Yeah.
Counselor Sheridan? Counselor Jones? And then we're gonna go to Kobe, he's on Zoom after you.
He can go if he wants
No,
to.
go ahead.
All right, couple quick questions. I believe it was about, actually, six some odd years ago that we did away with the previous snow removal bylaw. And we've been struggling with this ever since. All of the areas highlighted on this map, those sidewalks are public way, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So there are no private property owners that own any stretch of that area. Okay.
No,
So how is it legally viable for us
excuse me.
to?
Wait,
Go ahead.
hold
I wanna
on.
make sure I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah,
You asked me
yeah,
if any of these sidewalks
Yeah.
are on private property.
yeah.
No, they are not. But
Okay.
then you said, they're not some of these might be private homeowners, not commercial.
Okay, that's true. So these are all public ways, and
Yes.
we're requiring private property owners who don't own the sidewalks to shovel them. And we could be talking about anyone from the age of 22 to 90.
Yep.
Okay. And if they don't do it, we're gonna fine them $25,
Yep,
even though it's something they don't own.
the sidewalk, yep.
Correct?
Yep.
Wow.
No, I think it's gonna be 50. It could be
Or
50,
yeah.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
How do we even possibly have the legal right to enforce private property owners to clean public ways? I have an issue with this because if there is a lawsuit and somebody gets hurt, let alone the person who even owns the property gets hurt shoveling a public way, we could get sued.
I don't know.
Jamie?
Incorrect. So dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of cities and towns in Massachusetts have similar bylaws to this on the books. It's part of town code. And don't forget, people can't just sue us for an immaculate amount of money without any real due liability. In fact, this actually does the inverse. It protects the community because there's a clear legal bylaw on the books that people are to follow. And so if someone slips and falls today without a bylaw, they could take action against us, but they can only really sue us at a certain level. And to be honest with you, on a public sidewalk, saying that public liability is 100% on a municipality and there's no other liability is a very, very high bar to do. Think of it like roadways. Same thing with roadways. If you have a pothole, there's a state statute that says if the town people know and documented a pothole and they didn't fill it, okay, for like weeks on end, and someone hits it and destroys their rotor, the town could be liable for that. If the town did not know about the pothole, which is usually the case, we get a call if somebody hit or saw one, and we go out and fill it.
Okay.
So actually, laws are pretty clear on this stuff. Now, people may not agree with that, and that's certainly fair opinion, but there is no legal liability to the community by asking a private property owner to go out and shovel the public sidewalk.
Right, but is it the private vehicular owner's property rule and responsibility to fill that pothole?
No, it's the public responsibility,
That's the
obviously,
public's responsibility.
unless you're on a private way.
Right.
Yeah.
So the fact is that this opens up a very sticky legal perspective, as far as I'm concerned, in regards to putting into a bylaw requiring private property owners to basically clean public ways. I've got issue with it, let alone even fining them for not having done so. I don't like it. I think it's problematic in many ways, and I think also we're also looking to hold responsibility people who may not actually even have the means to clean these sidewalks effectively, as it's so delineated in this bylaw. And you're talking quite a stretch of road here. You're talking the stretch of the whole town, from one end to the other end of the town, all along Route 140, portions of which aren't even owned by the town, they're owned by the state. Everything around exit 17, for what's it called now, that's state roadway. So I don't know. I've got issue with trying to hold the private property owners responsible for what is, for all intents and purposes, a public right-of-way. And this is why I voted against this years ago to finally take it off the books, is because it opens us up to just a plethora of issues. That, not to say that they will happen, it's just that they could happen. And that's where I'm going with this, Madam Chair. Thank you.
We did discuss adding this all the way down 140 so that people could walk safely to get to places like the train station at the end, like at Forge Park, and to get to groceries. Because if we want to encourage people to walk, we have to make sure that they can get there safely.
Understood.
Yeah.
I know the logic.
Yeah. But we're going to go to Kobe. He's waiting on Zoom. And then we'll go to Pete, okay? Kobe?
Yeah, I'd start with a question. How, if at all, does this change DPW's approach to plowing sidewalks?
I mean, obviously, if this goes through, it's gonna make us more efficient. I mean, I still have to grapple with our priorities of, doing the roadways, the town buildings, and then the sidewalks is the third. But this would obviously, this represents about 25% of what we have to do, which we're doing now anyways. So, I mean, knee-jerk reaction, I could have all the sidewalks done everywhere else around all the schools and everything else 25% faster. So, but there are, as Council Jones says, there's sections in there that, like the town has responsibility. We'd obviously still have to do where the state is. We would do that. So we tweak it, but we would be better and quicker at what we do. And I think that's one of the reasons why this is brought up.
Yeah, would you still get to those, like, Main Street? Like, would that still be, like, gone over by sidewalk plows?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think most of these roads around here, they're still gonna, people are gonna go out there, but we'll probably still go down there afterwards, because, 36 inches, but we have to open up even more depending what's going on. But, don't forget, we have extensive, the map up here, we have an extensive sidewalk plan, as you know already. All the way, we're still doing all of Pond Street, all the way down there, all the way down to the schools, Wachusett, so that we still got a lot to do. But this was put in to, assist us, make us more efficient, and basically help with the general public. It is, the chairman brought up, the one area that has added on here would be basically from Pond Street out to the Bellingham Town Line 140. Because we've got a lot of requests for that because of what do they call it, the apartment complex out there wants to go the train.
Westerly.
The Westerly, and that's just, it's a good walking area, it's a safe area, so.
Okay, yes, so that's helpful. I definitely would encourage that it remains our practice to double back on all of these. That this doesn't relieve the town's responsibility to make sure that they're clear as well.
Absolutely not.
Just allows us to spread the priorities out. On the actual map, the only the most major one that stood out, I know that we talked about 140. 140 East Central past, really, you included, where the commercial ends, that feels like both harder to, it just seems like less reasonable for those landowners and less likely to be useful to anyone meaningfully walking down sidewalks. So if I could propose one change, it would be to end the pink at Gatehouse Lane, where the commercial ends. I don't know about it.
I don't know. I'm looking at it on the map here.
Down 140?
Kobe, can you describe it a little bit better?
Yeah, where's Gatehouse Lane?
What do you mean?
East Central Street
Near what?
at Gatehouse Lane, where the yellow dashes end, because that's the end of commercial.
Oh, okay.
Right, that's where we switch from. If you can picture that stretch of road, we switch from apartments to pretty spread out, you know, aside from Cook's Farm, but even Cook's Farm, to my knowledge, most of them aren't, none of them are walking into town. Certainly people at Gatehouse Lane are. I don't know anyone further than that. It gets to be a lot of like farm homes on multi-acre properties. Just a thought.
So did we add that part on because we discussed last time to do all of 140?
I'm assuming we added it on because we said all 140.
Right.
But I think it makes sense all 140 the other direction. To me, it doesn't make sense in the Rentham direction. Just that end stretch
Okay.
is not dense residential.
All right, well, that's a small change.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can, certainly, if the committee wants to dial that part back, we're happy to bring it back as far. I think part of the logic, I think Kobe's right, was just the town line and to Cook's Farm, getting out to the outer edges, but if folks want to pull that back, happy to do it.
Okay.
I mean, we can.
My other map thought was everything from the housing authority into town to the transit. We don't have included. I think that's okay, as long as I don't know the housing authority's snow clearance policy either at the bulk of it's at Central Park Terrace, but there's also that property on Winter Street. I don't know if I don't know if we're not going to have them clear because we're saying that area isn't quite dense enough to reasonably expect them. Then I would hope that it becomes one of the town's priorities to clear, because that's some of our lowest income and least likely to own a vehicle areas. Getting from your Park Streets down Winter Street.
Madam Chair.
Okay, Kobe, Brutus has a response.
So, yeah,
Go
like
ahead.
whether you say like Wachusett Street, that is one of our priorities. The DPW is still doing just because of proximity to school there. So, and we've even modified since I've been here 18 years, we've never added additional sidewalks, but we've prioritized them. So even like on Wachusett Street, or I could say Pond Street, we might do around the school and do one side of the road till we get the whole sidewalks done, and then we'll go back and get the other side of the road. But so at least there's
Yeah.
one side. So that is Wachusett is obviously a priority area for us, so that does get done.
Yeah, Peck and Winter I think would be Wachusett certainly. Peck and Winter also.
Yes.
And
And then the other thing with this, don't forget, I think when we initially started looking at this, Jamie, way back when, was we tried to identify the areas that had the high commercial retail areas. Because realistically, and there are some residential folks tied in between that we're looking at, but ideally, I make this statement.
Yeah.
If you're the Stop and Shop and you're getting your whole parking lot or Big Y done, it's really no big deal for the contractor that's doing that to go and clear the sidewalk off.
Right.
So it's not, we just look at it, I
Yeah.
think not that much as a burden on the businesses, for the majority of them. I can't say that for everybody.
yeah, and I do think that if you're in, essentially we're aligning it with zoning, right? It's downtown commercial district, it's C1, and
R5.
GR5, which I do think that, yeah, if you're in the densest residential area, which most of them are going to be multifamily buildings, so also contracting that out. But you have, some responsibility. Part of the benefit of living so close to town is, you then have some responsibility to chip in and do your part there, as do, as you said, dozens of other communities around Massachusetts. I think that's all reasonable.
Thank you, Councilor Frangillo.
Thank
Are
you for your work on
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
All right. We'll go to an audience member.
Should I stand up anywhere? I don't know.
Stand up go to the microphone, state your name and address.
Peter Roche, 50 Cottage Streets. So this is largely to do with Councilor Jones's concerns with it, which I share myself. It may not seem it to look at me, but I'm a disabled person. My shoulder doesn't work after a car accident. shoveling snow is brutal for me. In my very small sphere of town, both on Main Street with my business and on Cottage Street where I live, there are 2 cancer patients, 2 people that I know with upper body disabilities, and a literal one-legged man. And I don't know who is supposed to shovel snow for them. To have us required to clear these streets off within 12 hours of it happening isn't necessarily feasible for all of us, especially after the snowplows go through. Like, there's the difficulty and pain I could put my body through to force it to happen, but even when it gets that icy concrete mixture, I may not physically be able to do so. And I don't understand why we put on laws that even us that are trying to do the right thing are unable to follow. Maybe I'm misunderstanding it, but it doesn't seem very feasible for people like myself, and to threaten us with fine for it seems unreasonable, an unreasonable request. That's mostly all.
Okay.
I'm sure I'll
Are you
get up
sure?
again and say other things.
Thank you. Jamie?
Through you, I think all of us share Pete's concerns, and this is to answer Pete a little bit. There is no perfect answer. Someone somehow someday has to clear sidewalks for people to move, and we had Ali Rayum was another example at the last meeting who was saying we need this for people who have disabilities. And I guess it just matters on maybe what the nexus of the disability is. Maybe different people with different disabilities have different views on these things, and I fully understand and respect that. I wish I had a magic answer for it. I don't. Pete obviously is speaking to an issue that's going to affect a series of people. I think someone's going to bring up folks who are senior citizens, right, who are physically unable to do something. I guess I would ask Pete or others, what is the answer? Because the other concern, Pete, just from previous debates for several years, is a lot of people complain about the condition of sidewalks, and particularly in icy or snowy conditions. And so the full 100% responsibility right now is on the town DPW. The town used to have a bylaw in the books years ago. It was never enforced because essentially you had a lot of people saying, how could you possibly ticket somebody $25? Even for people that were fully affluent enough or physically capable enough who just didn't want to do it for whatever reasons or didn't like a government regulation. A lot of other communities, it doesn't work for everybody. And I'm not saying that everybody has an app or a computer, but there are services out there where people can dial up and get a young teenager for money to come out and shovel sidewalks. Hold on, let me just finish, Pete. I respect that.
Yeah.
Okay, we had a theory at the last meeting too, where when homeowners come out or business owners come out of their place of gathering, and see each other, and then know, like you do of your neighbors, there's 2 people down the street or somebody that can't do it, that maybe that brings a better neighborly sense of like, oh wow, I didn't know somebody was over there who was disabled or had one leg and couldn't do this. I'm gonna go chip in and be a better neighbor. I'm not gonna sit up here and even preach that somehow any one of us in this room has the right and wrong answer. These are definitely difficult decisions to make. What I would just say is, I think to the EDC, and others that may be listening or interested, I guess I just ask, like, how do we thread this nexus of clearly the job and the resources the town has is not enough to appease public sentiment. And we've just went through a fiscal forecast that shows we're not going to have any more staff anytime soon in the DPW. Like, it's just not, we don't have the money to do it. Again, unless we go out and raise taxes somehow to pay for all of this. On the other hand, Pete's comments, as well as Ally's and many others, have differing opinions, but I agree with Pete. Like, I got one email while we're sitting here watching this from down in Patrick's neighborhood saying, how are the elderly going to deal with this, right? Mm-hmm. So this is the tough nexus, right? Like, at some point, there's got to be, I hope, some sort of balance to say, well, geez, the job's not getting done. The DPW obviously doesn't have the resources to do it. and we can't expect them to raise the resources soon to be able to do this. That requires, as we've discussed, ballot initiatives to raise taxes, which are far from certain. And then on the other hand, your concerns are extraordinarily valid, and for somebody that is gonna have that concern. I would just say, Pete, we just said this before the meeting too, Brutus hasn't given out a ticket to somebody on this. It's really trying to encourage on the books people to be better than what they're doing. But the idea that there's, or even the fear that there's some sort of Gestapo that's gonna come run around and start whacking people with tickets, it ain't happening. I understand it's on the books, I understand it can't happen. The fine is there for the repeaters who are intentionally saying, I don't wanna do anything about this. And I'm gonna be anarchistic about it and just say, no, we're not gonna do any regulation, who have no issues with their bodies or from age or any other issues. So I think we're open to all ideas, and it's certainly not an easy point to be able to solve.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead, Pete.
Sorry. Couple points in there. I'm a walker myself. I don't drive, so I do fully rely upon these sidewalks being cleared. It's very important to me. Having this issue solved is very important to me. If you leave it up to private interests, some folks will do it, some folks won't do it, and a lot of folks will do it at different levels. So if we leave it up to private industries, it's not going to be cleared. It's not going to actually make it into such a way that I can use it to walk. Right? It's really a public thing. We have a Department of Public Works, and it's a public sidewalk. That's where it needs to be rather than relying on private interest. And you said yourself that one of the solutions for this is to have people call up and hire somebody privately to go and shovel their driveway, shovel their sidewalk. What you're talking about is by proxy instituting a disability or old tax. For those of us that can't do it, we need to go get somebody else to do it, or we be threatened by this law. Now, I understand that this law is not here to attack us, but I love my town. I take great pride in being able to follow as much of the laws as possible, and making it impossible for me to do so, or again, taxing me for my disability seems, again, quite wrong. And again, the old folks as well, like it's the same thing, like it's a disability tax or an old tax. And that's not a good solution. And even if we did it, it wouldn't make the clean sidewalks that we need.
I mean, through you, Madam Chair, the same claim could be made if we went out to do an override to raise more money for DPW employees to go fulfill the obligation that people desire, the service level that people desire. That's also a punitive tax.
But that's not leveled specifically against the disabled.
I agree with that, but unless you go for an override specifically saying $1 million will be spent on this purpose, that actually is doing the same thing. And so it's just doing it in a different format. The bottom line is more elbow grease, more people, more hours, more staff, public, whether it's public or private. I'm not disagreeing with Pete. At some point, we're either going to work within what we have, right? Or we're going to try to change the paradigm some way. And this is not an uncommon paradigm, right? This goes on in like literally almost all of Eastern Massachusetts. So this is not something that's just like plucked out of thin air that we just decided to do. This is a pretty routine thing. Go to MAPC, you can look at the toolkit. They have like about a dozen or 24 examples of bylaws in there from communities that are our size, the Brooklines, Norwood, whatever comparable you want to say. And so, I'm not saying it's easy. I don't want to be in a position, Pete, where, it's a situation where I'm like disagreeing or it's just simply, we're trying to solve a problem that has been alerted.
Solve this, yes.
And I think that, it's a tough decision to make. And this isn't necessarily the only strategy that can be employed, to Pete's point. But I got to make sure the council is clear. We either need a new idea or the situation will stay the same. And maybe the status quo is okay.
You all set, Pete?
If I may, how much would it cost DPW to perform these services adequately? Yes, rough estimation. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, sir.
I couldn't because of, it's one of those variables that we just don't know what winter's like.
Right.
Do you know roughly what you spent last year on snow plow or sidewalk clearing services?
I could probably figure out the overtime number, is probably in the, probably say last year's not a fair winter, didn't
Or,
it?
yes,
I would say sidewalk clearance probably in the 150 to 175 range. And-
Okay.
But that's labor.
Mhm.
And then we also have to make capital investments, in the snowplow, the equipment we use now, the last one we bought was, we got a used one, and it's still $180,000. So, they're just so expensive, so it's a lot to bring it up to that, to the next level. I mean, I think what Jamie's trying to say is that, there's a threshold of acceptance in town where we're at right now. We've been doing it for a long time. And, folks in town are pretty good at, they know it takes us a little while to get our sidewalks clear. If we
Right.
wanna make it better, we have to figure out a way to do it. This is one of the tools that we've just looked at to put out there, because, other communities do it too. It's a tough thing because, obviously, and I said this before, it frustrates me, the guy's been working all night, and I always think, the worst section for me in town, when I go down, basically coming out of town, going down East Central Street, going over the hump, over to, Franklin Ford, that when I see people walking on the road out there, it kills me. And I
Yeah.
wish we had people, more staff to do it, eventually we do catch up, but it's tough. Do I have the sympathy for, one of the side streets, Emmons? No. But when I see like 140 like that bothers me. So we do try to get there as quick as we can.
Right,
So,
right. I've heard from people about this, and they think that 12 hours is too long a time to give people to clear the sidewalks, that they're business owners and they want their sidewalk clean, they want the owners of the building to come out and get that sidewalk clean for them. So, so there's that too, right? I mean, there's definitely, I think about what Pete says, and I'm thinking like, yeah, like this is why it's really difficult, right? Because there are people, I mean, like, I don't know if you own that property, but like if there are people that rent, then the owner of that property should be cleaning it for them. Like I think that's probably what, yeah. Pet,
You have to be a question. Now, is there a law now for landlords, they have to clear the walkway in front of the house? No?
Nope.
no,
I wasn't sure.
yeah, so that's like,
Yeah.
it's,
I mean, the walkway, like the front steps or anything like that? No?
No, I think, through you, Madam Chair, I think to Patrick's question, to Pete's point, to Ally's comment, the last one, to your comments, Councilor Jones's comments, I think ultimately what we're all trying to do is try to make everybody be hopefully a better neighbor and be more alert to their surroundings, to understand that there's a problem that needs to be addressed, and we're all just trying to be a little bit more alert. I don't think that I think most people are already doing this type of thing anyway. A lot of them are, but we've had some issues with people not doing long stretches of it and walking in the street. And so, I don't know, at some point, someone loses part of this debate, right? Either we do nothing, and somebody like Ally on the last meeting we had may not be able to even get to where she's even going.
Right.
And other people who have canes or walker or whatever, or elderly can't walk anywhere, they can't even go in the street. Some people walk in the street. Brutus has an infamous photo, right, Brutus, of that person
Yeah.
with the perfectly cleared sidewalk walking down the street too. I mean, it's human behavior. We can't referee
Right.
it to the
I get
fullest
it.
extent.
I
But to
know.
Patrick's point, I think some people see sidewalks well plowed, and that's just on the business is just doing that on their own to be a good business or a good neighbor, or to Brutus's point, they're already paying for the service, particularly out here on 140.
Yeah.
But there is no law in the books requiring anybody to do that as of today. Thank you.
okay. Counselor Jones?
I don't know,
And then we're going to go to
you
co.
all set?
I guess, again, my question is, if the purpose is to clear the sidewalks, which I agree is completely vital, and we put laws on the books for the public to do it, for private individuals to do it, and we have these laws and we don't enforce them because we don't want to be dicks about it, that winds up leading directly back to where we are now with unsafe sidewalks. Brutus's figure for overtime and cost is just over $300,000. There are 33,000 people in this town. I'll give you my $10 now. You know, like if we need it done, then we need it done. We cannot put these costs, which are going to be higher in the hands of public. You can't get a kid to shovel out your sidewalk for $10. No more. It's going to cost more than that, or put the physical danger in our hands. If we want it done, we should do it properly. That's
Thank you, Pete. Kobe? Oh, sorry, Glenn. Sorry, Kobe. Kobe, I was going to go to Glenn. Glenn gave his seat up to, the floor up to Pete, though.
Oh, I just wanted to finish. 'Cause
Okay.
I'm still standing.
Thanks.
You're welcome. I'm going to be pro and con on a couple more things on this while I have the opportunity. The pro, I will say, before I get to the con, is that I do agree with one aspect of this bylaw in the sense that any private property owner who has, let's say, gutters, awnings, downspouts, anything like that that's going to contribute to the slippery sidewalks, like the awnings and the signage and the building slopes, et cetera, that are listed in 147.2, this portion I do agree about because that is something that we as a public entity don't have the means to change. We can't go up and scrape the snow off of people's awnings. We can't go up and plug up their drains to keep the water from getting on the sidewalk. That should definitely be a private property owner. This portion, 147.2, I do agree with. I think there's some portions that need tweaking. But now to the con part of it, and this is in regards to what's been so eloquently stated tonight, is that the goal or the hope is to put this on the books so that we have it on the books so that people understand there's a penalty associated with not meeting this bylaw. And the fine, the proposed fine is $50 for each offense for each property owner who doesn't clear their area. Now, Brutus, Madam Chair, through you, Brutus, when you drive past my house on any normal winter day after a snowstorm, is the front of my house and the sidewalk cleared off?
Yes, and
Yes.
then we try to put more snow in your yard.
I know you do. I know you do. And I end up having 10-foot snowbanks in front of my house. My kids like playing on them. That's fine. I can still handle it, even at 53. But that stretch, and I think it's 35 feet to be exact, in front of my driveway, in front of my house. I do clean it, but I clean it for two reasons. One is I just feel I'm obliged to because I'm able to. And the other thing is I have children. I live in a school neighborhood. There's a lot of kids walking up and down the sidewalk. My children walk up and down the sidewalk, and my neighbors walk up and down the sidewalk. So I feel I'm obliged to clean that portion of the sidewalk in front of my house, which is fine. I have the capacity to. But I can't ask, and I would never ask my neighbor next door who owns the corner, who owns twice as much frontage on the sidewalk, to go out at her age and clear off that section of the corner. I mean, for two reasons. One is we all know that snow gets pushed onto corners at intersections, so the snow tends to pile up pretty well on those corners. But I certainly wouldn't expect her at her age, and I'm not going to tell you what her age is, to go out and clean twice as much stretch as I have in front of my house on a snowy, rainy, icy day. It's just not going to happen. So to play again devil's advocate on this one is I think what we're going to find is that if we are threatening people, and that's what this is, to fine them $50 for not cleaning up their section of the sidewalk in front of their house, you're going to see people just simply say, okay, $50, that's cheaper than what it's going to cost me to pay for somebody to come and clear off, 70 feet of sidewalk. They're like, fine, screw it, I'll just leave it and find me $50 and call it a day. It stays unshoveled, the sidewalks don't get cleared, and then they just basically given the thumb back at the town, and that could be a commonplace for any stretch of sidewalk that people have a significant amount of property on, or they just don't have the means to do it. And one other thing too is, I'm gonna use myself as an example, because it's just the most logical thing to do. I have my own resources that I use. So like, for instance, I go out, I buy salt. I'll go out and buy salt. That costs me money. It's not getting less expensive as the years go by. I'm using my resources, my money, to take care of a section of the street or the sidewalk that, for all intents and purposes, I don't even own. That really, at the end of the day, I really don't need to put any of my money and any of my resources into clearing off that sidewalk, technically speaking. So, all right, let's say I do. Let's say I were to calculate how much it would cost me to clear my driveway. And I won't use the electrician's rate because that's ridiculously high. So let's use the labor's rate. Let's say like $25 an hour. It takes me, without the help of my children, probably about 2 hours to effectively clear off my sidewalk. So you're talking $50 right there, plus salt, which could be an additional $25, upwards of about, let's say hypothetically speaking, $100 to clear off that sidewalk. If I did it myself, it's cheaper to take the $50 fine than it is to go out and clear the section of the sidewalk. Do you see where I'm going with this? It's the fact is that what we're hoping people to do is to do the right thing. But there are just certain aspects, certain demographics of our community that we just shouldn't be sitting here saying, okay, we expect you to take the care of this portion of the public way at your expense, or find a way to get it done. It's just, I don't know. Because I shouldn't say never. But there are portions of my street that take some time to get cleared up, and my neighbors do get to them. But I don't know. I do agree with keeping people from having the snow and having the runoff and having ways for ice to accumulate because their property is discharging off into the public way. That's probably the only portion of this I do agree with. And I think they should be fined if they don't prevent those things from happening. But I just find it difficult to be requiring property owners to do this for public way. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Jones. I think the point was for you to help your neighbor shovel her section. But Jamie.
Super quickly, Madam Chair, I think the irony of the debate, and this I think goes on in other towns too, the people we are concerned about and that Pete and others have spoken about and being concerned about those sub-demographics, elderly, people with disabilities, Kobe mentioned earlier, people with low incomes who don't have other modes of transit, et cetera, are also the people that we're concerned about putting a government regulation on.
Right. You just hit the nail on the head.
So, thank you.
Councilor Sheridan.
Couldn't we exempt residential owner-occupied units? And that's where you get the businesses, you get the nonprofit churches that have, you get Dean College, you get the nonprofit churches that always shovel their walkways and parking lot, and you get all the commercial people who need to do it anyway.
You can. I mean, that's what actually the town, I think, at one point had before. It just wasn't on a map, where the requirement was really putting that onus on commercial property owners only. Which I think, again, we'll get into a debate at some point. Others may come in and say, well, why are we a business owner? Why do I have to do it?
Yeah.
If I'm Dean College, why do I have to do it? So the person next to me on School Street is a Dean College property. They should do it, but the person on the other side shouldn't. And I think, again, then we get to a point of like connectivity, which is, I think, part of what the discussion was at some point, which is business plows, feels they are being targeted because they have more money, and then the resident stops for 3 houses, doesn't get done, and then there's this equity, and then Brutus takes a picture of the person walking in the street again.
Right.
You know, and in some ways, I think there's an irony here where I think we're almost overthinking it all and trying to realize that maybe the view from 30,000 feet is we're just trying to really find ways to better the sidewalks so that people who are most impacted by the lack of transportation ability or maybe have more actual equitable access. But, you know, it's a tough debate. I mean, I just got an email from somebody who I know is listening, says, this is unfair. We should either do the whole town or none of the town. So I think in Elsilly, everyone's going to have an opinion. The opinions are going to be hundreds of different opinions on this. And if a bylaw were to go through, we're going to hear more opinions.
Right.
But I think ultimately we have to try to see what the view from 20,000 feet is and see, how do we try to make the sidewalks, either these ones or other ones, better for whether it's residential or commercial, because they're pretty intermingled too.
Right, right.
And that's the problem we have here. I've been doing this for a long time, and Jamie brought up a good point. Originally, we started looking at it, and it was originally, hey, let's just do the commercial retail, because that would help to
Right.
a certain degree. But what are you actually getting out of that? And the word that we love saying now is conductivity. And as Jamie says, it's like, yeah, you go down, you stop, and then you go back out there. So we're still pushing people into the road. So, and that's, evolved into this map. It's not my map, it's our map. It's what we looked at, and it seemed the conductivity, the high traffic areas, the higher commercial areas. I mean, it is. But we're not asking people to do Kenwood Circle, right? They got sidewalk out there, but, that's what we do. So we try to balance everything here together. And I don't know what the right answer is. But I think everybody wants to just improve the timeliness of clearing sidewalks so people are safer on the road. And it's an intermingled type of thing, right, Jamie? It's just, it's trying to throw it's a community effort. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I think, it's DPW's job. Maybe it's a resident's job. But we just got to kind of figure it out where we want to be. So it's hard. Very hard.
Kobe?
Yeah, I wanted to thank Pete. It just acknowledged, that's huge that we have that part of the conversation, right? We can't just go about this and ignore the fact that this is going to have impacts on people and business owners and people that we care about and that are struggling already. And this is going to have some impacts. And there's certainly no perfect answer. What we're talking about here is really a cultural shift. There was a time where, of course, you shoveled the place in front, and that was heavily enforced, and that was just a key expectation that everyone's shoveling out in front. And there was a time where our downtown corridor was more vibrant than ever, and the most valuable properties were those closest to it, because that's where everything was going on. We went away from that. We, I think, lost a lot of vibrancy, and certainly it cost us a ton to move away from that. And what we're trying to do is do this cultural shift back toward it, where we recognize that we have such an asset in a downtown transit option into town, in a fairly walkable downtown, and to start to do this cultural shift. I mean, we're doing it. This is all EDC has been doing. We're changing housing policy. We're changing, talking about parking policies. Certainly changing business and economic development policies. Talking about changing DPW priorities and arts and culture, and shifting the culture back. And that comes at some costs, and it's going to be hard and messy. And I think the only real answer to how we make this a little better is the difference between, and this is what I think Jamie's naming, is the difference between sort of policy versus practice. And we get to have policy that says, hey, here's the culture that we're moving to, but in practice we get to be reasonable in our implementation as we figure out the impacts that this has, as we spell out our expectations for people. And that cultural shift really does, you started to name some of them. It's looking out for your neighbors. It's groups of volunteers coming together. It's landlords having it within their policy that they're going to cover, if you rent from them, they're going to cover the sidewalks. Those cultural pieces come in time. We get to be, as a town, reasonable in our implementation as we stay attuned to changing our expectations of current owners and residents in that area. And we talked about the sort of messiness and how it's going to be, and part of that implementation evolution is why I still will name that. I think it's important, especially at the beginning, that the town still very much doubles back on all of these areas, right? Because it's going to take a while before we're at a point where, you know, the sidewalks are just clear and everyone can just expect that to be the case.
You're all set? I think so.
I think that's what I had. Yeah,
Yeah.
There's no great answer, but I think leading, you know, we're trying to set aims as to what Franklin's going to be, and everything needs to move in that direction. If we do it, you know, if we only do one of it and we don't change the rest, then we end up disjointed and exactly what he said, sort of taxing people for nothing more than their inability to, you know, participate in some made up things that don't actually help them.
Thank you, Councilor Frangillo. Is there anyone else that has any other questions, statements?
No, I think I've said my piece, thank you.
I agree with Councilor Jones about 147 too. For me, like, I really care a lot about the maintenance of the sidewalks. That's really the thing that I think about a lot is that sometimes when we do plow into like the sidewalks, there's no way any of us could physically get rid of it, but once the DPW goes by, then we need to maintain it. So I really like that. I think we'll have to change, if we change some of these other things, we'll have to think about this a little more, I think. Is everybody okay with that? Should I take a vote on talking about this a little, or thinking about this more?
So it says back to study,
Yeah. Yeah,
move back to study.
yeah. Is that okay?
Yeah,
Anyway.
I mean, again, through your magic, you just really wouldn't vote on it.
Right, right.
And
I know.
you'd give us some instruction on like what, you know, we can go back to kind of drawing board and kind of research some other ideas of what other communities have dealt with and to address this issue and see if there's any carved out exemptions in code or
Okay, yeah.
if there's any kindness matters flyers that Mary O'Neill can come up with to pitch to all the property owners to look out after their neighbors, you know. There's other strategies we can try to look at. I think the question for the EDC is, you know, because it's a goal for the council for the session.
Right.
If you want to park the car, just park the car so we can move on to the next topic before the end of the legislative session. If you want us to come back at the September 20th meeting, we can bring it back and try to report on if we found any solutions to, you know, the public comments we've heard tonight as well as the last meeting. We're happy to bring back, you know, in a couple weeks if there's anything else. But I think just some direction from the group about whether or not we're going to kind of not deal with this for the rest of the session and pick it up next year, or whether you want us to do a little more research and into it.
I think I would like more research. I think Kobe. He's muted, I think.
Yeah, sorry, I was struggling to find the unmute. I'm personally prepared to advance this. It's gonna be messy. It's going to be a shift, and avoiding that just ends up maintaining a status quo that we're not satisfied with, and that pushes us further from the type of community that we want. I mean, looking at other communities that have done this, Natick, Marlborough, Norwood, North Reading, Newburyport, all of them expect their downtown owners to maintain the property. What do they all have in common? Yeah, they're suburbs. They're pretty far out from the city, but they have central downtown cores around transit. And they've shifted to a culture that expects that. And, you know, again, that transition takes time, but I think it starts by advancing you know, a policy like this. So if we need to take some time, okay, let's take some time, but let's not fully table this, because this is one piece of the larger puzzle that we're trying to address.
Thank you, Councilor Frangillo. I agree that we can't just forget about it. We don't want to just drop it off, but I feel like I need to think about it more.
We could do both. We could move forward and ask for more information when it goes to the full council.
I think it's kind of our job doing that stuff.
We could move it forward to the council and then have more information, that's true. I mean, we don't have to add, I think sometimes Councilor Jones does remind us that we don't have to, like, discuss this forever at this level.
No, we certainly don't.
And then if it's on the full council, it might be more people, public comment too, because I think people listen to full council more than the subcommittee.
Is that a motion?
I couldn't hear, sorry.
I'm talking to Patrick.
Oh,
Sorry. I'm asking him if it's a motion to move the
Is that
bylaw to the full council.
that's a
with-
motion.
With more information.
I'm just asking him if
with
he's
more-
making a motion.
That is absolutely possible. We could do a little more research. Amy and I just talked really quickly about going back through the toolkit, talking to a couple of towns, doing a little research. The state may also have some level of it, like, because there's a process to get a handicap placard, right?
Right.
And maybe there's an area there for a little bit of research and see if that's like a way to maybe exempt certain individuals, at least some.
Yeah.
Who, so we could look at some stuff. You could still move it on to the full council.
Okay.
Yeah, make a motion that we move it to the full council and get more information.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Councilor Sheridan,
Yes.
Councilor Jones.
I'll move it just for further discussion. I don't
Okay.
approve of it.
Okay, all right. Councilor Frangillo?
Yes.
Chair, yes. Let's move it forward for more discussion and more information about exemptions. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Amy and Jamie and Brutus, for all the work you did on this. And with that, I would accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
There's a second.
Yeah.
Councilor Frangillo?
Yes.
Councilor Sheridan?
Yes.
Councilor Jones?
Yes.
Chair, yes.